The inability of European powers to oppose the rise of Nazi Germany determined King Carol II to abandon the hope that Romania's traditional allies would intervene in her favor. A political and economic reorientation towards Germany was considered the only chance of maintaining territorial integrity.
The Economist, April 1st, 1939. Germany exploits Romania. Now that the facts are emerging, it is possible to see how far-reaching is the hold which Germany's new trade treaty gives her on Romania, and having seen, to realise how little reason there is for the merchants and politicians of the rest of the world to sit back with sighs of relief. For if it is not true that Romania has bound herself entirely to Germany, it is true that the future development of this country of 19 million people will now be carried out only with the intimate collaboration of the Reich. With this in mind, we may catch at the full implications of the policy of gentlemanly disinterest in the Balkan Europe, hitherto pursued, in fact, if not in theory, by Great Britain. The history of the last 3 years shows Romania ready, if not always over-willing, to do more trade with the Western powers, and with each lost opportunity brought nearer the virtual surrender of her free development to Germany's skillful blend of patience and pressure. It is silly to pretend that Romania has let down the Western powers. She has merely done the best for herself in the circumstances. The Romanians least of all have desired those circumstances.
However, this hope was misplaced because Germany was trying to build a network of agreements and pacts with most of Romania's neighbors, including the Soviet Union. Hitler was ready to arbitrate territorial disputes between his lesser allies as long as they remained under his control.
Picture post, December the 9th, 1913. Romania. She is encircled by neighbours who would like something out of her. She is receiving the attention of Hitler, who would like everything out of her. But Romania, under the enlightened despotism of King Carol, stands firm for independence. What sort of a place is this Romania, whose independence was guaranteed by Great Britain 8 months ago? Romania is a country more or less circular in shape on the eastern verge of Central Europe. As a result of the last Great War and the Second Balkan War, its territory has been more than doubled. Today its area is roughly the same as that of England, Scotland and Wales together. On at least 3 out of the 4 states which adjoin its frontiers, Romania has to keep a watchful eye. To the south, Bulgaria has never renounced her claim on the province of Dobruja, lost to Romania in 1913. On the west is Hungary, always restive about the province of Transylvania, which was allotted to Romania in 1918. On the north is Soviet Russia, whose ruler, it is felt, may issue a demand for the return of the lost province of Bessarabia at almost any moment. Last and most ominous, there is the Nazi Reich, which, though at present insulated off from Romania by Hungary, has never disguised her desire for the exclusive use, if not control, of Romania's surplus of petroleum, grain and timber.
Bessarabia and northern Bukovina were lost to the Soviet Union. Bulgaria regained southern Dobruja, and on August 30, 1939, the northwestern part of Transylvania was given to Hungary. It was a political disaster, and on September 6, 1940, Carol II abdicated, and the throne was left to his son, Mihai I. All authority was held by General Ion Antonescu. Democracy was abolished, and Romania became a totalitarian state.
The Economist, September 14th, 1940. Romania, the home front. The situation in Romania is still very obscure. King Carol's last-minute attempt to save his position by transferring his dictatorial powers to General Antonescu failed in the face of the wave of hostility which swept the country against himself and his regime. He was the scapegoat of the Transylvanian tragedy, and nothing short of abdication would have prevented serious disorders. His son Michael becomes king for the second time, but the general retains full dictatorial powers. His aim is apparently to gather round him the leading figures in Romanian public life on the basis of national reconstruction, acceptance of the Vienna Diktat, and good relations with the Axis.
Hitler grew more and more confident in his Romanian ally and was counting on Romania's oil resources for his most daring military campaign, the invasion of Russia. On June 12, 1941, the German Führer informed Antonescu about his plan to attack the Soviet Union. Romania joined the German offensive on the Eastern Front and in 1 month was able to retake Bessarabia and northern Bucovina. Nevertheless, Antonescu had already decided to continue the campaign alongside Germany.
The Economist, September the 20th, 1941. Romania as a belligerent, September the 2nd. By piecing together the scraps of information finding their way out of Nazi-controlled Europe, it is fairly easy to reconstruct the background of Romania's entry into the war against Russia. It can now be seen that General Antonescu's visit to Munich, a fortnight before the aggression, served only to put the finishing touch to a long-prepared plan of campaign. It is also clear that the conducătorul, Romanian for Führer, was promised more than merely the restoration of Bessarabia and northern Bucovina in return for active participation. Ever since last summer, Romanian eyes have been kept fixed on the western border, the lost parts of Transylvania which all Romanians prize more highly than all other ceded provinces. They have been repeatedly and openly encouraged in their hopes of a restoration by the general himself who, moreover, linked up his declarations on the subject with his 2 previous visits to Germany. All these hopes received a shattering blow when Hungary, the other junior partner in the tripartite agreement, joined in the aggression against Russia a few days later, in circumstances not yet fully clear, but in all probability directly attributable to fears or even open threats of that very restitution which had primarily brought Romania into the war. The use Hitler, for his part, chooses to make of the competing claims in the triangle is further illustrated by reports that he is now playing off the 2 rivals against each other in pushing their troops beyond their originally assigned posts. But General Antonescu may have had a further objective of his own in making war on Russia, the bolstering up of his regime in the face of growing discontent and opposition.
The German campaign on the Eastern Front didn't go as planned. The defeat they suffered in the Battle of Stalingrad was a turning point in the history of the war, but also a turning point for Romania. Antonescu was no longer confident in the ability of Germany to win the war and decided to re-establish contacts with Romania's former Western allies.
The Economist, March the 15th, 1944. Romanian peace feelers. After Finland, it is the turn of Romania to put out peace feelers to the Allies. The Romanian Pasaviki is Prince Stirbe, who is now reported to have gone to Cairo in order to establish contact with Allied representatives and find out what terms of armistice the Allies would offer. The Romanians are acutely aware of approaching defeat is certain. Their desire to contract out of the war has now been greatly stimulated by the hope that the Allies would allow them to retake Transylvania, which they had to cede to Hungary under the Vienna Award of 1940. President Benes has now stated that this is, in fact, Marshal Stalin's intention. Romania is thus in a unique position among Germany's satellites. Capitulation would entail for it not only territorial losses, but also gains. It does not seem likely that the Russian territorial claims here would go beyond Bessarabia and Bucovina, the loss of which would be offset by the reacquisition of Transylvania. But in the endeavour to get out of the war, Romania will meet with much greater difficulties than Finland. The Germans may find it impossible to send reinforcements to General Dietl's armies in the north, but they are bound to put up the stiffest resistance in the Danube region. They cannot easily give up the Romanian oil. Militarily, Romania is an ideal buffer territory. The ring of mountains, formed by the Eastern Carpathians and by the Transylvanian Alps, is a formidable defence barrier inside the country. The short and convenient communication lines from Austria through Hungary would enable the Germans to reinforce Manstein's armies as they retreat from the Ukraine into the interior of Romania. Prince Stirbe's peace mission to Cairo is no doubt symptomatic of the uneasiness which is growing in his country. But the position there is far too difficult to justify any hopes of a quick result.
Iuliu Maniu, the leader of the democratic opposition in Romania, was one of the most important links with the Allied countries and made constant efforts to win their support. A strong faction consisting of traditional political parties, but also socialists and communists, rallied around the young king Mihai I. On August 23, 1944, Antonescu was removed from power. Romania broke all relations with Germany and accepted the armistice with the Soviet Union and her allies.
The Economist, August the 26th, 1944. Romania changes sides. On Wednesday night, King Michael of Romania broadcast from Bucharest the announcement that his country had broken with the Axis, had ceased hostilities against the United Nations, and had accepted an armistice offered by the Allies. He also made it clear that Romania, like Italy, wishes to become a co-belligerent on the Allied side. And soon after the King's broadcast, fighting between the Romanians and the Germans was reported. A government of national union under General Sănătescu has been formed. The majority of the new ministers are generals who served under Marshal Antonescu, but Antonescu himself, according to some reports, is not among them and has fled to Germany. The liberal leader, Brătianu, the old leader of the peasants, Maniu, as well as the representatives of the Communist Party, have joined the cabinet as secretaries of state. The dictatorship has come to an end, and with all its oppression, said the king, and added the warning that anyone who opposes the decision we have taken and who takes justice into his own hands is an enemy of our nation.